Live from Austin, Texas, it's time for Night Shift. On the show this week, Harold McMillan, Megs Kelly from Magna Carta, Mobley, from Measure Austin, Mimi Styles, community updates from Executive Director Pat Buckta, and I'm your host, Nakia. And now it's time for Night Shift. It happens every Wednesday at 7 o'clock, right here at Austin, Texas Musicians. All right, welcome to Night Shift. We've been off for a few weeks, and we're back. We have a special show for you tonight. We're going to be talking with some great artists you saw there. I realized as I was watching the very intro that I actually edited together that I had left off Sonia Javette, who's our musical guest and also a board member. So be ready for Sonia. She'll be up here towards the end of the show. Tonight, we are very, very grateful to have some amazing folks with us, and I'm going to bring them on one by one, and then we'll get right into it. Mimi Styles, of course, is the founder and president of Measure, a local nonprofit that uses data to eliminate social inequality. She also serves as the Greater East Austin Youth Association's Miss Juneteenth Scholarship Pageant. And is on the board of African TV5. Styles is also the creator of earlyaware.com, a tech solution that informs first responders about an individual communication barrier, cognitive issue, or physical disability before and during an emergency. So please welcome to the show, Mimi Styles. There she is. Hi, Mimi.
Hi, how are you?
Good. One of the things that you said before the show started was that, and I think I've seen this also on your website, that you're like a self-proclaimed nerd, which I love that.
I'm like self-proclaimed, like totally evident type nerd, you know. and also a nerd that has to update her bio. So I've definitely have done some amazing things with the Miss Juneteenth pageant. Now that's now directed by somebody else, but.
Right.
And AFTV5 is totally awesome and amazing. I hope that you all take the opportunity to check them out. No longer on the board, but definitely still.
Oh, okay. Next up, we have Megs Kelly from the groundbreaking local hip hop collective Magna Carta. Megs has been making music with Magna Carta for almost a decade while telling her own story as a Black female LGBT artist. Megs, it is truly an honor to have you join us tonight. I'm really looking forward to hearing your perspective on our discussion this evening.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
You bet. I remember the first time I heard you was on KUTX, and I was blown away. I'd never heard anything about you, and I was just like, whoa, who is that? So really glad to have you here. Next up, Mobley found his sound by embracing DIY approach to music with a dynamic mixed media live show that features his talents as a multi-instrumentalist. Y'all, he's a graphic designer, he's a video director, and a vocalist and songwriter. Mobley recently participated in a similar discussion with Austin 360 about a week ago, and we really want to take some time to dig even deeper into some of those topics with you today. Thank you so much, Mobley, for being on. We're humbled and grateful to have you here tonight.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you bet. And Mobley is also going to be doing something that I'm a part of that we'll talk about in about a week or so. We don't want to spoil the surprise yet. And then, of course, we have Harold McMillan. If you've lived in Austin for pretty much any amount of time and you don't know who Harold McMillan is and what he's done for our music community, that changes tonight because Harold has been making music in Austin for at least 30 years. He's a champion, really, for community causes throughout that time. Harold currently serves as the director and founder of Diverse Arts Culture Works and as the producer, venue manager, and artistic director of Kenny Dorham's Backyard. Harold, it is indeed an honor to have you join us here tonight on Night Shift.
Hey, I'm happy to be here. Looking forward to it.
Man, and we also we will be welcoming Austin, Texas board our Austin, Texas musicians board member Sonia Javette, who will be joining us later in the show to share her voice with us through music. Before we begin, I just want to take a moment to express that this show is for our music community to really hear from musicians and folks in the community about things that are affecting especially our Black musicians and our Black artists here in Austin. And, it's very important to us that we respect your time, that you're here. And we want you guys to help us drive this conversation. We're here to listen and learn, and hopefully our audience is also going to be here to listen and learn. And at the end of this show, maybe have some ideas for some real action that our music community can collaborate on together. I do have a framework of some questions that we're going to hit on, but ultimately it's more important that we talk about what's going on with you. How are you feeling in this current, really, civil rights movement that we're seeing right now? And I hope that that's good with everybody. At any point, if we get too far off topic or we're not comfortable, please let me know. Each of you does amazing work within your specific industries to speak your truth and to lift up your communities. Let's just take a moment to go around the table and learn a little bit more about each of you, and kind of more importantly, what you've been focused on over the since the pandemic has started. What has been driving you to are you still creating? Are you still working? Has it been harder for you to do those things as the situation has continued to get really, really dark in some moments with very little, sun shining through? Harold, let's take a minute, maybe start with you. You and I spoke earlier this week, and you were talking about that you were actively working on things to do, with policies surrounding lifting up Black music in Austin. But can you tell us a little bit about the experience that you're having now? Because you've been saying these things at City Hall for years. Do you feel like that there's a difference in what's happening now as opposed to the work you have been doing?
I think where we are right now is going to end up being one of those watershed historic moments that unfortunately, this stuff is in a lot of people's face because of tragedy. And that's unfortunate, but what that is creating is an opportunity for dialogue and, position making, and in some situations, calling folks into account. You say you are about this, that, and the other.
Right.
Well, I read your policy statement, but I don't see it in implementation.
Right.
So I tried to stop going to all of those meetings and such, 5-7 years ago, because I spent a lot of time doing that and trying to push policy issues within the city,
Right.
and within the music community. I'm just tired of it and started scaling down. My nonprofit, we published a magazine. We had an art gallery, a documentary project. We produced a jazz festival, blah, 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 a whole bunch of that. Lately, I have just been trying to make sure that there's a presence on East 11th Street with the venue, with Kenny Durham's Backyard. But I've been doing a good amount of research, reading, collecting information that has to do with the city's track record on equity with African-American culture, Black folks, Central East Austin, Cultural Heritage District. It's a whole list of things. It's quite complex. And where we are now I feel, is it's time to go ahead and pull those lists up and start talking about this stuff and see what's really important.
Yeah.
Creatively, I'm playing my basses more in my house than I probably normally would because I ain't got no gigs.
Man, I know.
You know,
that's really hard. That's been especially hard for me, not having any live gigs. I was supposed to play this past Saturday night, and there's nothing there. But the thing you mentioned about let's pull up the list, let's show the history, but also the importance of saying, okay, yeah, it's one thing to say this, it's another to actually do it, right? And I think that is we're running into that a lot right now with the Austin Musician Disaster Relief Fund, where the Economic Development Department went through it so fast, but they never asked the community, they never asked the actual musicians or any nonprofits like HAM or SIMS anything about eligibility. And as you know, Harold, we got a lot of musicians who don't qualify for that money, or at least don't think they qualify for it because of the way that it was set up. And they've now, basically said, if I want any more information, I'm going to have to get a public information request. And that's that's the kind of bureaucracy that we sometimes have to deal with. But I don't think it's acceptable at all. Mobley, one of the things that I've noticed with you, because I follow you on social media, and you're one of the few people that I have set to notify me when you tweet, because I actually, there's social media. It's just, there's a lot going on. Sure. But I can always trust that whatever you're posting, number one, is mostly in the past has been about things that are of an artistic nature. But man, I'll tell you, in the last few weeks, you've been serving some of the most real data, like actual stuff happening across the country. And I'm just curious, had you ever thought that you would be in a position to use your platform in that way?
This is the only point of having a platform.
Right.
My last record, Fresh Lies, I talked about it when I did press, is about my relationship with America as a Black man, using a romantic relationship as a metaphor. I had a single that was supposed to come out last month that was called James Crow. This is what my entire artistic life is about. I've never had any particular interest in fame. Art is something I feel compelled to do, and this is something that whether I like it or not is a defining aspect of my life and of millions of other people's lives. And to leave it out of my art would be to deny part of myself. So
yeah,
this is stuff I've been talking about for as long as I've been in public.
Yeah. And you had, what was the name of the video that you had a while back? And I can't think of it off the top of my head.
Tell me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that one was, plain as day, that was exactly what we're talking about right now. When you released that though, did you feel like that that folks even got that message then?
There are things about this moment that are a bit mystifying to me. I think everybody on this call can attest that if you're Black, this stuff isn't news to you. And the nature of the stories that are being told right now, like, there's literally no new details. Like, you can pick a case from this year and compare it to a case from 2 years ago, compare it to a case from 20 years ago, compare it to a case from 80 years ago, and the underlying facts are basically the same. So, and Black people for generations have been eloquently writing, speaking, singing about this stuff. You could fill libraries with the literature we've created about this stuff. So, I don't know if people got it back then. I don't know what's happening that's different right now. I'm grateful that there, like Harold said, there does seem to be a sea change afoot, but I don't know what was the perfect storm that created this different reaction in this case than in ones in the past.
Yeah. Megs, when you are, one of the things we were talking about just before the show started was, that it seems like every day is another kind of like, well, kind of almost like, holy shit, really? This has happened again. And to hear what Mobley's saying is that it's not really not been happening. It's just that it's getting more attention now. And your music's also been very political from the get-go for a variety of reasons. When you first started out in Austin, what was your experience trying to get into clubs, not only as a Black woman, but also as somebody from the LGBT community who's trying to make a statement in that way? Was that, even harder because of that?
I would say that it's interesting because if you're familiar with Magna Carta, it's one of the stories we tell all the time about when we first started. The whole entire reason that Magna Carta is a band, 5-piece, is because we weren't getting booked at venues. We weren't seen as legitimate. And I think in that time, rap music in Austin, it really carried a stigma. They thought that you were going to come in and tear the club up or something like that, something ridiculous. And not only was our music not, I mean, even if the music reflected that was not a reason to deny us the stage. And so even so, coming in the very beginning, our whole existence is almost shaped around, that whole experience of not being able to, book a show. And so we got the band, and all of a sudden it was different. And I agree with Mobley, like, my music has always been Black. It's about my Black experience. It's the whole entire reason I write as a writer. And in terms of being a part of the LGBTQ community, it's, for me, I'm Black first, and it's not to take away from any other thing or anyone else's, the way they identify or anything like that. But for me, the hardest thing about penetrating the community, the Austin community, in terms of music in general, has been being a Black musician, and specifically being a Black musician in the world of rap and hip hop. And so that's always been an uphill battle for us. And now you see more rap shows around Austin. You see more people opening the doors and opening the stages for them. But the fact that it was ever barred from us to begin with is the issue at hand, and it still continues to be the issue, because now we're in there, but now it's a bunch of microaggressions. So it's always informed my music, and it's always going to live in my music, because I can't take my skin off. I can't take away my experience. And so that is something that, we deal with as Black musicians in Austin.
Yeah. I do remember the first time that we shared a bill together was at Spider House. And I forget the event exactly, but it was the first time I had seen you live. And I had heard that you had a band that was backing you up, but I was not ready for, like, I was like outside of the thing, and I was like bumping, like, who the hell is that? Came around the corner, and y'all were just on fire. I think so many times this thing that we saw last week with Jackie Vincent and Andy Langer's response about, there's not an audience for it, that sort of thing. And then we saw a local retailer, Fred Schmidt, who's, started K-Jazz in Austin. He was calling out the Andy's boss, saying when they came to town, he said, let's start a jazz station. And the guy was like, well, there's just not enough black people who are going to listen to jazz. First of all, as if only black people listen to jazz is ridiculous. But, you know, the ironic thing is that he went on to start his own station, and that station was on 93.3 until they got acquired by the company that owns ACL Radio. And the first thing they did was got rid of the jazz station. You know, that to me is an exact example of what we're talking about. You know, Mimi, you know, are somebody that is constantly dealing with numbers and statistics, and really working to try to level the playing field and lift up the communities who are being held back. And I'm curious, from your point of view, where do you see Austin being able to utilize data to help tell this story? Because as we know, and Harold knows, at City Hall, they're going to want to know, you know, facts and math, and they need people to come up and show up and say those things. So where should we start looking to really tell that story at City Hall, not just from an emotional standpoint and from a human rights standpoint, but from a data-driven standpoint?
Yeah, definitely. First of all, thank you for even having me here. I feel like completely honored and out of place at the same time. But I also feel like extra cool. Like Meg, Mobley, and Harold are on the screen with me. So it's really dope to be in this space and to talk about this. But, you know, so we're talking about some super incredibly historic divides, like historic racist institutional issues here. We're talking about first, and honestly, we're talking about music in this space, right? We're talking about something that in many cases most have come from and been birthed through Black people, right? Jazz, hip hop, rock and roll. I mean, every form and sense of music really and truly has been birthed and created out of the Black man or the Black woman. And so, and to even come into this conversation right now and to hear these musicians speak and to try to understand, you know, their experience, which is, for me, it's very new, because again, this is completely new for me. That experience is data. And so for them to have to go to City Hall and then to have to be, provide those facts and, you know, numbers and metrics and so forth about who has funding versus who doesn't have funding. Their experience is data. Their experience matters. Does that make sense? Like, just the sheer work that they put in for, and especially in Harold's case, like generations, like in Austin, right? That is data. And in my mind, I would think, and I would implore the city, that this is a moment of reckoning. This is a moment of reckoning, and I'm going to say this right now, for white America.
Absolutely.
To look at the atrocities that they put on Black America, and then to undo that racism in the form of reparation, in the form of reallocation, and in the form of divestment from those power structures into Black America. Yep. You know what I'm saying? So this is an extremely delicate opportunity that I hope, you know, that those power structures really, you know, reimagine what music is and where it came from, and appreciate where it came from.
Absolutely.
So again, data is not just numbers and statistics. Data is lived experience.
Right.
And we can quantify lived experience in ways that have never been done before today, through music too.
Yeah.
I like that a lot. Harold, and here's Sonia Javette. She's getting set up. Pat's put her on the spot. Let's pour off until she gets her setup ready, Pat.
Hi, Sonia.
Harold, you know, hearing that from Mimi, you know, with your years of experience at being at City Hall and at these tables, and the frustration that you experienced in trying to bring that very message at City Hall. What can musicians do differently? Not just Black musicians. I mean all of us. What can we do as a community of musicians to begin to start taking care of these issues ourselves first and foremost?
Some of what we're doing right now is communication, and in terms of it amounts to leverage. In terms of leverage, what Mimi said, a lot of us need to own and know that and remind people. When I was in graduate school and doing an intellectual history class, the point is, if you're interviewing 5 80-year-old Black men who've been playing the blues all their lives, who have no education, those are your experts. Those are the intellectuals.
Yeah.
You know, what they have to say is the real deal. And if you spend time around policy issues, the truth in those policy issues and the stats in the numbers, the truth is damning enough. You know, just count them, count the marbles, you know, and the marbles are not equitably divided. That's not a good thing. The other thing that Mimi said that more of us need to say, especially to other white folks, brown folks, yellow folks, who are allies in this, we need to be very clear that the reason that this is getting attention right now is because white folks are pissed off. It's not because we're pissed off. We've been pissed off for a long time. You know, we've been telling these stories for a long time. Before there was a cell phone on every corner with a camera, and before the media was actually paying attention. I got beat up by some cops in Houston. I'm a sweet guy. And that doesn't matter.
Right.
Cops will beat you up, you know. That is the example that's not about the music industry, but it's the same conversation.
It is.
When you're trying to dismantle systematic, traditional, long-lived, entrenched, and all of those words like that, institutional racism. And that's what this is about. And it's not going to change until enough white folks stand up and say, we ain't gonna take it anymore.
Sure. And your point is you know, white, brown, everybody has to be together on this. And we've seen so many people this over the past, you know, 4 or 5 weeks really, you know, exposing themselves as pretty blatant racists in the process. And a lot of folks saying, you know what, I've had enough. That's not cool. You know, you're going to have to move on. And one of the things that I said this week was, you know, as musicians, it's no longer acceptable for us to sit back and watch as any one of us are hurting. If we see someone that's being mistreated, then we have a responsibility to say something, especially right now, more than ever, but it should just be the right thing to do. You know, but I think for years, what we've seen are people who have been in these privileged situations and they don't want to give up that privilege and they fear by speaking up that they would have something to lose. And when you say this about white people right now being upset about this, you're absolutely right. One of the things that I've noticed about musicians who are speaking up is because we don't have any gigs, because we don't know when venues are coming back, then I just look at it from a point of, well, what else do I have to lose? You know, now is, you know, anybody who's listening to this, what else do you really have to lose? Who do you need to play for so bad that you can't stand up for somebody else? You know, and that's one of the reasons that I really loved what Jackie did this week, I feel like, or last week, that was a beautiful way of saying, you know what, I appreciate it, but no thanks. Mobley, I saw you tweeting about this, and coming out in support of Jackie. Is that, and then we saw Stephanie Bergara, who is, a Latina musician, saying that in all of their contracts from now on, they're going to start saying that, people of color have to be represented. Is that one way? Is there another way that artists can begin to not just be an ally, but really form solidarity with folks?
Obviously, what Jackie did is an admirable thing, and I obviously support what she did, but I don't think it should be missed that the position that she was put in, the position that Alicia Ilani was put in, the position that the Peterson brothers were put in, the Blues on the Green for a lot of us is such an immense opportunity, and to have that opportunity kind of dangled in front of you, and then for the terms on which you might accept it to be to require the sacrifice of your dignity, the sacrifice of your principles. The thing that's been most moving and profound about that situation to me is my heart goes out to the artists who had this opportunity put in front of them, and then because of just bullshit, they had to forfeit it for a higher cause. So I don't think it should depend on that. I think we need to, people are talking a lot right now about systemic racism, and it's easy for that to be a catchphrase, but when people say systemic racism, they mean everything. They mean literally every part of life. We know race isn't a biological reality. Race is a power relationship that determined by racism that puts a ceiling on your life expectancy, your health outcomes, what kind of income and social mobility you're going to have, whether you can afford to get into the music industry in the first place.
Sure.
It's not like this country is set up to support white artists. Like, it's hard to make, it's a precarious way to make a living. And a lot of Black people simply don't have the luxury of taking that gamble. And so it can't be isolated in any way. It has to be a wholesale change. And because racism is about power and it's about allocating resources, necessarily that's going to mean people who have been hoarding power are going to have to give up power. And so prioritizing that and making that a part of your ethic, making that a part of your moral approach to the world has to be foregrounded. It has to look like giving up opportunities. It has to look like giving up your platform, your money, your access to opportunities, because you got them through fundamentally violent means. Like, the fact that some white guy gets more opportunities than Megs does is directly related to the fact that Meg's ancestors had to toil in the fields under the lash. Those are one thing. And that's not comfortable. That's not comfortable for us. And so if as a white person, you think that is going to be fixed and undone, and it's not going to involve discomfort, it's not going to involve radical change, radical meaning from the root. You take the thing and you lift it up by the root. I don't think there's any way to tiptoe around that, because if we just keep, biting around the edges of this thing, our children are going to have to worry about this, and their children are going to have to worry about this, and their children are going to have to worry about this. And I can't stand that idea. I can't stand the idea that more generations of people are going to have to deal with this. So these little piecewise things where it's like, well, how can we tweak what we have? What we have was set up to keep people down. Right. That is the way that it was designed. Take any institution, any large institution, any place that you see power concentrated, it is concentrated there for a reason and at the expense of lives. People die every day because of this inequality and this inequity. And so obviously I'm a musician and I want things to be better for musicians, but things won't be better for us if things don't change in education, if things don't change in healthcare, if things don't change in income inequality and wealth disparity, and if things don't change in terms of every aspect of our lives, because this is a racial caste system, this is a racial hierarchy in which we are being held down in every way imaginable. So, you know, these individual cases are great, but it's going to take systemic changes, and that means people who have power now are going to have less power tomorrow.
Yeah. That is really, really, I think the hardest thing for a lot of folks to actually come around to, you know, and quite honestly, I have said for the last, especially since the George Floyd murder, that all of the dog whistling that Trump and all of the Republican stuff that they've been doing is there. It might as well not even be dog whistling. It is straight up. This is it. This is your call to action. If you want white people to stay in power, you better keep us in the White House. You better keep us in control, because they're terrified of giving up power. They're terrified of that. And you know, the night that he was elected, you know, I was in the living room with my husband, and I was in tears, because I thought, man, if his racist ass can get elected, and it will be a matter of time before they come for me, you know, a queer brown guy with a rainbow flag hanging out on my window, you know, and it's just been one thing after the other, right? And when I look at our city hall and I see we have, you know, some diversity in city council, but not near enough, you know. And when we look at even the percentage of Black people who live in Austin right now, it's not because they don't want to live here. It's because they were forced out, you know, they were pushed out. And it is, I don't know, from a musical standpoint, what else that we can do other than to keep not only singing the songs and telling the stories the way that we've been doing, but also to now join these other fights. And we're seeing musicians getting out in the streets, you know, actually protesting. The ones of us who can get out in the streets and protesting. You know, I think we just lost Megs, and I was just about to ask her if she's having some connectivity issues, but Mimi, that part of this equation, that knowing that it's going to require a real redistribution of power, and a real divestment of these institutions that are keeping people down. What is it that you think that is keeping the regular folks from actually, you know, being able to swallow that pill and understand what's going on?
So let me give you a quick little history lesson real quick, right? So like in 1863, right around, you know, Reconstruction period time, you know, Black people, we owned about 1/2 of a percent of the American wealth, right? Still to this day, 100 and some odd 50 more years later, Black people now own and control about 1.5% of the American wealth. So when you think about the how much we own and control as people of, you know, of African descent, like in America right now, we have to think about that first. And so if you're thinking about how can we be anti-racist, and especially in the music industry, and especially in Austin, that's supposed to be, you know, the live music capital of America. We have to recognize that, and then you have to be able, just like how, you know, Molly just said, be willing to give up your platform. And to, I mean, even this platform, I got to be honest with you, Nikia, like this platform, I would have been honored just, you know, to see that this was, you know, that there was a Black host even asking these questions, because just to be honest with you, this is it's a very belaboring conversation for Black people right now to have with non-Black people, just because there's so much trauma right now, right? And just to even have to explain race is difficult, and we can feel it in our stomachs, right? So, and then, you know, but when it comes to seeing like what Austin can do right now, Austin can do so much. I know that there's a call right now, you know, by one of the most brilliant artists, and much respect to everybody on here that I know personally, and that's Shaka, you know, putting out this call for action of reallocating funding and for using funding to directly support Black music, creating opportunities for Black platforms to reallocate money that they're getting from this, you know, hotel tax and to really rebuilding the Black infrastructure for music. And that's the thing, it's been destroyed and it's been taken from these artists that I'm looking at right now. It's literally been colonized, literally been stolen, literally been copywritten with a white name on it, you know, some of the same music. And so there is so much that Austin can do right now. It's supporting people like Treeji. Like, if you know her, like, I mean, you know, the music that comes out of her, you know, is just, it blesses literally my soul. You know, Writers Against the Storm, when and all of these people here. So it's not the question of just protesting in the street, because protest is needed. That's the fuel for the movement, right? But the movement is not going to be televised. The movement is going to be what's going to happen on the budget. The movement is going to be the metrics that we create and the targets that we set and the time at which we take in order to get there. We're going to, you know, making sure that funding, I know that there was a new fund that came out for $1,000 for, you know, musicians in Austin that came out today. I saw something like that from the city. How many Black people are going to get that money? How many Black people have access to even knowing about that funding? How many Black people are going to be provided the opportunity to rebuild? And so those are my questions. And quite honestly, again, it's about giving up, just like how Mobley said, that platform, and allowing Black people to have real conversations, and white people can just listen and believe. And I can't tell you how much believing is so important in this process of listening, but listen and believe.
Mm. Megs, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, you know, as you were saying that, Mimi, I was just thinking of my experiences with grants and situations like that, where it's dangled in front of our faces, and it's kind of what's the right word? I would say it's passed off as a fair opportunity, but then you start to look at the room and you realize you're the only Black artist there, you know, or you realize there are tons of Black artists that I know, that I work with day in and day out, who are just as deserving of these opportunities as I am. So why is it that I'm the only one in the room? So I feel like when we're talking about specifically funding, we should be talking about who is doing the work to make sure this falls in everybody's hands. It can't just be, you know, this is a foundation for musicians, but then you turn around and, you know, you see a certain demographic being the same ones over and over again, you know, given the opportunities. And so it does come down to some things have to be given up. And not only that, but I don't just want people to do things. I want them to understand what it is that they're doing and understand the change that it is making. you know, we can post Black pictures and this and that for the next 2 weeks, but do you really, kind of going back to Mobley's point, do you really understand the root of it? And until I feel like people are understanding that, you won't really see the change that is necessary. And especially when we're talking about funding, it goes a lot deeper than like throwing money out there, because who gets the money? Who decides who gets the money? So it's a lot. It's a lot for us to process, because, or I can't speak for everybody, but for speaking for myself as a Black musician in Austin, you think that you're getting something, or you think that you're getting a step ahead, and the sad reality is that no, you're the only one in the room, and I don't think that's fair. I don't think other musicians are deserving of that. And like you said, they need the access, and we don't even, some people don't even know about this stuff. And then some of the people that are in charge of distributing the funds don't even know about these musicians who are out here creating amazing music. And it's systemic, and it's rooted in a lot of different things, because some of the stuff most people probably don't even want to hear, but all music is Black music. So it's very important that everybody is getting a voice, and everybody is getting, and it's not just for show. It's I really understand what it is that I'm contributing. I really understand what it is that I'm doing, and you sticking to it, you know? So I think that's pretty much my spiel on that.
Yeah. Harold, you raised your hand a minute ago, but I want to, before we get to you, I want to let Sonia chime in now that you got yourself set up. What would you like to add to this, Sonia? Oh, we can't hear you. Your audio is off. Nope, not yet. Not yet. All right, while you're figuring out your audio, let's bounce back over here to Harold for a minute. Like I said, it looked like you had raised your hand for a minute. So what were you going to add?
My hand raising was really a, yeah, that's right point. That's it. That's really what that was. The thing that I think about, one of the things that I think about with these issues and the idiocy surrounding some people that just can't wrap their minds around it, is that race in science and specifically biology, that was taken off the books 100 years ago, more than 100 years ago. It doesn't exist. It's a social construct of power and control. You know, a lot of people don't want to hear that. And for me, I think all of us should be striving to get to that place that's righteous. And I don't mean that in a necessarily religious way, moralistic way, but if the system itself and the people that populated the system were righteous, were Christian, or good Jews, or good Muslims, or whatever, it's about humans. It's about humanism, fair play, social justice. This whole race thing is a fucking big distraction that we have to deal with. And what I am hoping is that going forward, as a result of more conversations like this, I think some people are just going to have to get accustomed to being called on their shit, you know, because it's this thing about that, you know, Andy did a very media-worthy backtrack from what he originally said, what he originally was quoted as saying, you know, you people don't have a draw. You people can't draw. Well, I can cite examples with jazz and blues and funk, but hip hop provides the best example, I think. Years ago, when hip hop first started to hit in Austin, years behind a lot of places, but when it first started to hit in Austin, that whole thing that Meg was talking about, it's like, you say that we don't have a draw. Truth of the matter is, you get us on your stage and we do get a draw, and there are too many black folks up in there, you're going to fire us anyway because you're afraid your club's going to turn, you know? And the whole thing with the big guys, ACL, South by Southwest, et cetera, having a draw is long past the point. If they put up the show, 20,000 people are showing up. And part of what some of us try to do is bring folks up with you, you know? So go ahead and put the well-known commodity up there as your headliner. Use your platform to help professionalize and bring up other folks too, just because it's the right thing to do.
Right.
You know, it's just the right thing to do. Yeah. The frustration that I have is the double bind, that whole thing with the snake chasing its tail. There's not a draw for you, and then when you get a draw, it freaks people out, and then they want to take those opportunities away because they don't want that many black folks in their club. The next step of that part of the conversation is part of what Shaka was bringing up, which I've been bringing up for years, and I'm sure all of us has been bringing up for years. There needs to be more black folks participating in the higher level music business infrastructure in this town.
Right.
Owning clubs, having venues, you know, being hospitable to working with a national promotion company or tour or something that says this community is important in Austin and we are going to invest in it.
Right.
You know, and the whole thing with that particular pot of money that you guys were talking about, yeah, it's about cultural tourism. If you blow up some black culture, it will generate cultural tourism.
Sure. Yeah.
But if you don't, that probably ain't going to happen. The other thing that Meg was saying that really needs to be driven home to the bureaucrats is that they have a job to administer a program for a community that they know little about. And they can't figure out how to do outreach, right? Staffing could be a good move in that direction of having people on that staff that know something about the community. But this is as stupid as me setting up a foundation to give out awards to country music nonprofits. You know, how am I going to reach in? I'm probably not going to reach into that community because it's too much work. Most musicians are not going to line up and go to city meetings all the time. That's not how it's built. So I think part of what I'm looking forward to in the black music community is us doing more coalescing and realizing that we got to do some of this shit ourselves, because the people that are being paid to do those jobs, they're not going to do it. I don't think they're going to do it. I don't think they're going to do the level of outreach and actually getting their hands out into the community to know who the folks are, because they ain't hired anybody to sit behind that desk that knows the community. I'll shut up now.
No, I like that. It's one of the reasons that I invited you on, because that's you've got a great point of view. Let's check in with Sonia and make sure she's got her audio rocking. Oh, still not there. I don't know. Sonia, you may have to come back with something. I don't know. Maybe hop on the phone with Pat if you need to, and we'll get you back in here in a second.
Let me just say too, Nikki, real quick while we're waiting for Tanya, you know, Black people are so tired of being pacified. I mean, in reality, like just extremely tired of the dog and pony show and the make-believe, you know, progressive Austin. And it's to a point now that, just like Harold said, like we are coming together and we are unifying against several facets of racism, whether it's the music scene, whether it's the police department, whether it's the education system, whether it's healthcare. COVID has highlighted the direct racism within Austin, right? Especially on the brown community in Austin. This opportunity right now for us to unify as Black people, to get behind those actions like Shaka's putting out right now, and to literally be of one voice, speaking at City Council with one voice is so incredibly important, because what ends up happening is that people that are not on board with really believing that Black Lives Matter, they're going to be quiet. They're going to shut down. When you present to them this opportunity of reallocating funds, they're going to be quiet. And so, and honestly begin to leave space for actual change. So I am not one of you amazing creatives. I create in my own way, it's usually with numbers, but there's such an opportunity here, and whatever I can do to support you Black people, moving this needle and driving this fund, creating this fund, whatever that looks like, I'm here for it. Right? I'm incredibly encouraged and also incredibly saddened by what has that by what we're now having to really face. Although we face it forever, but now this is the opportunity for change.
I like that.
So,
Sonia, do you have audio yet?
Can you hear me now?
yay!
Real quick, really honored and grateful to be here. Harold is the only person I've met in this group. In the community itself, I've been here for 8 years, and I don't know even a fraction of the Black community. I want to. I have not had the opportunity to. As far as the experiences for me in the Austin music community, being a Black female that plays guitar, that's not showing tits and ass, very limited on getting gigs, very limited. I think that we need more communication. I know for a fact I don't know even a fraction of the Black community here, and I want to what groups to hang out with, what people to talk to. How can I help with what we're all trying to do, which is lift us up and get us out of this? And I would like to see more, as I said in all the meetings that I followed Pat in, more communication. We don't have enough communication in the community. And I've never been a person to speak up publicly, but I have to now, because I'm in this position, because I am a Black woman, because I am a Black female musician in this town. I have to speak up for the other ones that are behind us. Like Moby said, I got nieces and nephews that are behind me, and cousins and aunts and uncles. I don't want them to have to keep having to fight to survive, to be alive, to have the opportunities that others are given automatically and we are not. I want more communication, which will mean rebuilding the whole. Let's do it. Sorry,
I like
go. There's a question in Pat's comments about women in the music industry, and women are seen, like in our group alone, there's 30% are women. I think maybe 10% in our group are Black. Where are the rest of the Black musicians that are part of the group that want to see those funds? You can't get those funds unless you're part of the group so that we can get it to you. I get flustered when I talk, so I apologize, but I want to see more communication. I want to be part of Mimi's group, Meg's group, Moby's group, and Harold's group. I want to be a part of what's going on. Nakia brought me in a year ago, and I'm here to help. I can't help because I don't know what we need as a group. I need us to talk to one another. I'm here. I'm ready to help make the change, because I am 6 years age difference from when segregation ended. So I'm 54 now, and my parents are at that conversation stage of keep your head down, don't say anything, be quiet, don't cause trouble. We can't do that anymore. We are being targeted as Black people, as artists, to not be successful on purpose, and that's not acceptable. It's never been acceptable, but now is the time to make changes for it. So that's my 2 cents.
Oh, thank you, Sonia. Gosh, I love you so much. You really, I can't wait for everybody to hear you play. If you haven't heard Sonia perform before, you're in for a real treat. She's a really gifted singer and songwriter and guitar player. Yeah, and that's exactly right. Tamika Soretti, you never have to apologize. We're so grateful for you being here, Sonia. And I think you taught a lesson just before this, right? And so that's why
I teach from 3:00 till 7:45 every Wednesday.
Yeah.
I teach guitar lessons. Black people. There's a lot of us that
I'll be hitting you up.
Because school's going to start soon, and all these young people need something to do.
She good too.
Send them my way.
Yeah, she is good. With that, so one of the things that I really wanted to do was give everybody a chance if they wanted to add something. If you feel like we didn't address anything, obviously this is just a small conversation, where we're talking about this here. And I want to acknowledge, Mimi, you're absolutely right. And one of the things that we talked about with Sonia was maybe having her host this evening, since she's one of our board members. But as you heard, she had a previous thing that she couldn't do. But I'm so grateful she joined us here. And even earlier today, we were talking to one of our musicians advisory panel members, and one of the things that we said to her, and she's an Asian American female, was how important it is that we know we have this platform. We've been so focused on COVID-19 relief and trying to help musicians get this grant set up and everything, that we have not had a chance to do a whole lot of work with our musicians advisory panel members. But the whole point is to be able to lift those voices up. And there's so many people. I got asked to play a gig next weekend, and they said, hey, we really want a gay artist on this show, etc. And I said, can I give you the names of some other people who are younger, who don't have exposure, that are out and proud and want to do this show? Because I don't need that money right now, and I don't need that stage time, but those people might, and that's the kind of thing that I want to be more a part of, is beginning to see that. As Sonia said, I'm 45 now. I've had a great run. I'm looking at my future to try to figure out what I can do to continue to give back to the community and still make some art in the process. But I do believe it's time that we start to really switch things up. And as I said in my statement earlier this week, that the truth is that we really have an opportunity to rebuild it from the ground up. And we have an opportunity to do so in a way that has never been done before. And I really hope that Austin musicians who are watching this, and anybody in our music scene here, is just as committed to that as I know each of us are, because it is going to take work, and it is going to take each of us to show up and do it. And Lord knows, Harold, you're right. Musicians do not want to line up at City Hall to speak at these meetings, but we need y'all. We really do. We really do to tell your truth about what's going on, because they've got to listen. And Mimi, you made such a great point about how that is the data. You are the data by showing up and letting them know that. I really, really liked that. Mimi, anything else that you want to add?
Yeah, I just, again, two things really quick. Number one is that music that y'all play is healing. And in this moment right now, in our community, for people that look like us, that healing is going to be incredibly imperative over the next, years. Like, I mean, just to heal from the sheer trauma that we're seeing every single day on our TV screens, and that we're digesting virally, on our social media. So for you guys not to be supported by the city of Austin, or for this, that Black Fund that's coming up, for that not to be supported by every single person that walks down Austin Street and that says that Austin is the live, music capital of America, that would be an extreme missed opportunity, right? So that's number one. And I think number two is just, again, there is so much opportunity for white allies and for people that don't look like us to step up now, right? Again, we are tired. I know Harold expressed it earlier, of having to be pacified, to show up and to be ignored. And at this point, we're looking for a true co-conspirator to say, you know what, I advocate for Mobley because I am Mobley. I speak up for Megs because I am Megs. I show up for Sonia because I am Sonia. I protest for Harold because I am Harold. I give up my platform for Shaka because I am Shaka, right? Like that's the work that we're looking for. That's the partnership and the co-conspirator, work that we're looking for. And I know deep down in my heart that Austin has it within them. And we're just asking right now to prove it, and let us measure it. That's it.
Yeah.
Megs, anything else you want to add to that or to the conversation in general before we hear Sonia play?
Yeah, I think all in all, something I was telling Pat is that a word that I hear a lot is change, and it's a nice sentiment, but I think with the word that we need to be using is work, because that is exactly what it is that needs to happen. Change could either be, a verb form, or it can be just a thing, a noun. But what it needs to be is it needs to be moving. It needs to actually happen. So I love this dialogue, and I love that we're all coming together and we're talking about these things. But I think what will really make the difference is to see some of these things put in action. And I mean, we're pretty exhausted. This is heavy. It's a heavy burden to carry. I mean, and it's not just from George Floyd. I mean, I grew up, or not grew up, but I'm showing my age, I'm a little young, but I was born when Rodney King happened. And then from there was the Trayvon situation. And it happens like every day. And so we're exhausted, we're tired, but we have to keep fighting, because for us, it's a mode of survival. It's a means of survival. And that's, I think for white people, it's something that you can walk out of the room, but for Black people, we can't walk away from it. And so what I would just love to see, and like you said, Mimi, I think they have it in them to, really stand by us and not just say it's about change, but like it's time to put in action and see some things really move the needle.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's great. Mobley, or I'm sorry, Harold, you raised your hand.
Well, that doesn't matter order. My wrap up, to where we've been today. I'm glad you brought Mimi. First, because analytics really a policy statement that the city makes that doesn't have a line item in the budget is just a okey doke. We're fucking tired of okey doke, right? So in order to have the city show up as they can, and the sidebar to that is that there's a lot of stuff that we need that the city just can't do. It's beyond their power to do. But the city can do a lot of things. and it's measured in dollars, you know, and so all of us do different things at different places in the industry, but just looking at a history of neglect, intentional neglect, systematic neglect, yeah, it makes perfect sense to carve a piece of money and say, well, this is a Black Music Fund. And there are lots of markers that needs to be hit under that umbrella, you know, professionalization, blah, 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 blah. That's how the city can show that they are up to the task, is looking at that budget, because that's the only way that it's going to trickle down to the street, I think. And in terms of us as community, we got work to do too. We got to, as Sonia was saying, we got to be talking to each other. We got to be like trying to reinforce that network. And that doesn't mean that Sonia has to go to every city council meeting.
Yeah.
But that might mean that we essentially might need to have a lobby committee that if you can't make it this week, I'm going to that meeting and take notes.
Yeah.
The other thing is that once things get kind of back to normal, most of the city official meetings that deal with the stuff that we're talking about, they are broadcast live and there's an archive there.
Yes.
And a lot of times they're making you do public information requests now, because I got hit with one of those too when I was doing some research. But a lot of the stuff that we're looking for in terms of background and those policy statements happen after the council does a resolution that becomes an ordinance, right?
Yep.
All of that stuff is searchable.
Yep.
You can find it. They just don't want to be real helpful with helping you find it. But folks like Mimi probably is all up in that city website and knows where stuff is. So we need to exploit her skills.
We got your back. That's exactly what Measure does. We partner with Black and Brown people and organizations to support them in finding evidence. That's what we do. So definitely.
I'm glad you're here. Absolutely.
Oh, there's the website, wemeasure.org.
Good work, Pat.
Good job, Pat.
That's producing behind the scenes. Mobley, any final thoughts for you before we hear from Sonia Javette taking us out?
No, I think they handled it.
Oh man, well, my final thought for tonight, y'all, is I'm just so grateful for y'all to hop on here and take some time, because I know it's exhausting, I know it's tiring, and I really appreciate it. And several of you I've had, you know, outside conversations with over the last couple of weeks or so, and I, you know, I'm always here and ready to help. And you know, I will say that one of the things that is you know, really unfortunate right now is, because of the way that Austin Music Disaster Relief Fund was rushed through, and to Harold, to your point about there was an ordinance or a resolution from a council member that became an ordinance that put that into motion, right? And in that resolution, it said they needed to check with the community, stakeholders, the music nonprofits, and the music commission to create the eligibility. They didn't ask any of us. And now they're asking for people's bank statements.
Yeah, it's crazy for $1,000.
For $1,000, they want you to give a bank statement. Look at me. And when we demanded that they change it, you know what they said? They said, well, we got to wait and let the program work. Well, it ain't going to work. And then a week into it, when they thought they'd be out of money because so many people would rush to get it and nobody was applying because it is too invasive and the barriers are too high, they had the nerve to say the reason was musicians were having trouble juggling their priorities. Doing what? What else do we do? We're just sitting here waiting to apply for this money. We can't get to it. And if I can't get to it, then you better believe that the folks who are the most vulnerable, who need this money, definitely can't. If Harold McMillan, who's been filling out grants for 30-something years, can't make sense of an application, if it takes a 17-minute video to explain the process, then you are excluding some people, a lot of people. And if you are Black and you're watching this and you're a musician and you need that money, please go to atxrecovers.org, apply. Don't give them your bank statement or whatever. Send them a note that says, I need this money. This is what, I'm a musician, and please give me this money. This is what, give them the other stuff they're asking for, the bio, whatever it is they need to prove you're a musician. Don't give them a bank statement. And if they got a problem with it, there's an email address that you can also email them directly and say, I don't think it's fair that I have to give you a bank statement and prove that I don't have at least 2 months of living expenses. We have written them. We have written city council. I have spoke time and time again at music commission meetings, and they have refused to make any changes to that program. And that is absolutely unacceptable.
And you have to agree to be okay with them at their discretion sharing with anybody. Other third party that they want. Get out of here. It's crazy.
That's bullshit. So we will keep fighting for that. And I love the idea of a lobby committee. That's one of the things that our musicians advisory panels do. They go to these meetings. If anybody's watching this and you are interested in learning more about how to show up to City Hall, how to show up to any of these meetings, please visit us at atxmusicians.org, or you can send myself or Pat or Sonia an email. It's just our first names at austintexasmusicians.org. Thank you again so much for everybody being here. I want to tell y'all that I am so excited. I love hearing Sonia Javette sing. It is, you talk about a blessing. This is a blessing. So without further ado, Sonia, if you will take us out with a song. Thanks again to everybody for being here tonight. It really means a lot.
Well, I guess it's my turn to shine. Hi.
I'm going to put Sonia full screen.
How's that? Is that too loud or not loud enough?
It's perfect.
Okay. So I'm going to do the Sam Cooke song, Change Gonna Come. Because it's been in my repertoire for the last couple of weeks. I got asked to do the song. I was born by the river in a little tent. And oh, just like a river, I've been running ever since. It's been a long time coming, but I know change gonna come. Oh, yes it will. This song might make me cry. It's been hard living, but I'm afraid to die. 'Cause I don't know what's out there beyond the sky. It's been a long time coming, and I know change gonna come. Oh, yes it will. I go to the movies, I go downtown. Somebody keeps telling me, don't you hang around. It's been a long time coming, but I know change gonna come. Oh, yes it will. Then I go to my brother, say, brother, help me please. but it winds up knocking me back down to my knees. Oh, there are times when I thought I couldn't last for long, but I know now I think I can carry on. It's been a long time coming, but I know change gonna come. Oh, yes it will. Change gonna come. Oh, yes it will. Thanks for listening, y'all.